Do you hear it? That's the voice of the wind, whispering secrets no one wants to remember. Welcome, travelers of the dark. I'm the one who tells the stories others are too afraid to speak. This isn't just a scary tale. It's a forbidden memory. A shadow buried deep in a town that no longer shows up on any map. So turn off the lights, turn up the volume, and don't move a muscle. Because tonight, you're about to hear something you were never meant to hear. The shadow under the twisted oak, Nebraska. *** state, Nebraska, *** the choice isn't random. The vast plains of the Cornhusker State, interrupted only by gentle hills and lonely ranches, are the perfect backdrop for terror born from immensity and silence. Where the night sky is so deep it seems to swallow screams, and the wind whispers ancient secrets in the endless grass. *** the story, *** the Twisted Oak Ranch wasn't large, but it was prosperous. Lucas Miller, a broad-shouldered man as quiet as the land he worked, had inherited it from his father, who inherited it from his. 500 acres of golden prairie dotted with small groups of Hereford cattle, white and red, peaceful as clouds with legs. His wife, Evelyn, kept the white wooden house spotless, and his 16-year-old daughter, Sarah, dreamed of escaping to university in Lincoln, though she loved the sunsets painted in violet and orange over the fields. The charm lay in that routine, the low moo of cattle at dawn, the creak of the water pump, the smell of dry earth and fresh manure mingled with the wild perfume of prairie flowers. It was a world apart, governed by the seasons and the slow rhythm of ranch life, until the silence began to change. It was Sarah who noticed it first. Dad, the cows. They stare a lot towards the dry creek bed, south, where the Twisted Oak is. Lucas dismissed her concerns with a grunt. Probably smelling something, a snake maybe, but the feeling persisted. The cows, instead of grazing with heads down, stood still for long minutes, oriented south, their large dark eyes fixed on the distance, as if waiting or fearing. The usual mooing became a low, drawn-out sound, almost a lament, that seeped through the open windows even at night. Then came the wakings. Evelyn began waking up at exactly 3:17 a.m. every night, with a sudden cold that didn't come from the window. A cold that seemed to emanate from her own bones, accompanied by a feeling of heaviness on her chest, as if an icy stone rested upon her. She looked towards the south-facing window and swore she saw shadows moving faster than any coyote, shapes too tall and thin that melted into the darkness. She told Lucas, but he, practical to the core, attributed it to stress or indigestion. Too many old wives' tales, Evye, he'd murmur before turning back to sleep. The breaking point came with the missing heifer. A young cow, number 47, disappeared one autumn afternoon. It wasn't the disappearance itself that was strange. Predators existed, but how they found her. 2 days later, Sarah and her collie, Finn, located her near the dry creek bed, under the twisted shadow of the ancient oak that gave the ranch its name. But she wasn't alive, nor was she whole. The heifer lay on her side, her body grotesquely deflated, as if everything inside had been sucked out. The hide, intact but slack, hung unnaturally over the skeleton. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle, only glassy eyes reflecting a sky they no longer saw, and the smell. A stench of damp earth and ancient rot, mixed with something metallic and cloyingly sweet that made both Sarah and Finn vomit. But the most terrifying thing was what surrounded the carcass. The grass was flattened in a perfect circle, as if something enormous and heavy had been sitting there, watching. And in the very center of that circle, sprouting with obscene vitality, grew a small cluster of flowers, an electric, almost phosphorescent blue that Sarah had never seen on the prairie. The nights became unbearable. The cow's mooing was now a constant chorus of anguish, a sound that ripped through the silence like a dull knife. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, especially towards the south. Evelyn no longer slept. She spent the early hours in the kitchen, staring fixedly out the window, clutching Lucas's old shotgun with ice-cold hands. She saw things, shadows stretching long in the moonlight, shapes crawling across the ground with jerky movements, too fast for animals. She heard whispers on the wind, words in a guttural, twisted language that froze her blood. Sarah, desperate, searched through her great-grandfather's old journals, stored in a dusty trunk in the attic. On yellowed, damp-stained pages, she found fragmented accounts that made her tremble, mentions of the thing in the well, blue lights at night, the shadow that herds. He spoke of an ancestral bargain, an occasional sacrifice to maintain the quiet. Her great-grandfather wrote in a shaky hand, ***, it comes not from heaven nor hell. It was here before, it sleeps under the old oak. It feeds on the essence, the life heat, it likes the stillness of beasts. And sometimes the terror of men, they call it the silent shepherd, ***. The last night began with absolute silence. The constant lowing of the cattle ceased abruptly. A silence so thick it seemed to vibrate. Finn cowered under Sarah's bed, whining. Lucas, finally alerted by the terror in his family's eyes, loaded his rifle and stepped onto the porch. The full moon bathed the prairie in a ghostly silver light. To the south, under the old oak, something moved. It wasn't a shadow, it had substance. A tall figure, too tall, perhaps 10 feet, thin as a telegraph pole covered in some kind of dark, ragged cloth that fluttered without wind. No features were visible, only a profound darkness where a head should be. From its hands, long and ending in something that might be claws or tentacles, emanated a visible cold, an icy mist that crawled across the ground towards the house. And at its feet, glowing with that unnatural blue light, grew a perfect circle of those electric flowers. "Get away from here," Lucas yelled, his voice cracking with fear, aiming the rifle. The figure stopped slowly, the head tilted towards the house. There was no sound, but a wave of pure dread of ancestral terror slammed into the family like a mallet. Evelyn screamed. Sarah felt her legs give way. The figure extended a spectral arm towards the nearby corral. One cow, an old milk cow, suddenly stood up. She didn't moo. She simply stood and began to walk, with unnatural docility, towards the figure. Her eyes reflected the blue light, empty, like those of the found heifer. When she reached its side, the tall figure placed one of its dark hands upon the animal's head. The cow instantly collapsed without a sound, her body visibly deflating, like a punctured balloon, within seconds. Only hide and bones remained under the moonlight. The figure seemed to ... breathe deeply, a kind of wet whisper that swept across the prairie. The blue flowers glowed more intensely. "No," Lucas roared, firing. The bullet passed through the dark figure like thick smoke. There was no reaction, only the faceless head turned slowly towards him. Lucas fired again and again, useless. Then the figure began to advance towards the house. It didn't walk. It glided floating inches above the ground, the icy mist preceding it, killing the grass in its path. The house windows began to fog and frost over. The cold inside became polar. Evelyn, possessed by a fierce maternal instinct, pushed Sarah towards the back door. "Run, Sarah, to the truck. Go now." Sarah, paralyzed, saw her father trying to reload, his hands blue with cold, while the dark shadow filled the front door frame, blocking the moonlight. She saw her mother raise the shotgun with a heart-rending scream. Sarah ran. She ran like never before. Her mother's scream cut abruptly behind her, followed by a sound she refused to identify. Finn ran beside her, howling in terror. She reached the old pickup, her numb hands barely able to turn the key. The engine coughed, roared. She slammed the accelerator to the floor, the truck bouncing over the dirt ruts, speeding away from the ranch without looking back. Only once, at the crest of a hill, did she instinctively brake. She looked back. The twisted oak house looked like an island in a sea of silver frost under the moon. And under the old oak, the tall, dark figure stood motionless, watching the fleeing truck. At its feet, 2 new circles of blue flowers glowed, electric, illuminating to indistinct, flattened shapes on the frozen ground. And Sarah knew, with a certainty that froze her soul more than any cold, that one of those shapes wore her mother's flowered apron. Epilogue 1 month later, ***. Sarah Miller lives in a small apartment in Omaha. She has recurring nightmares, moans of agony, blue flowers growing in the carpets, and the wet whisper of the wind on the prairie. She received an anonymous letter, no return address, with a single sheet of paper inside. On it, drawn with chilling precision, was the old oak tree. And beneath its branches, beside the blue flowers, were 3 small stick figures. To lay on the ground, the third stood upright, looking towards the horizon. And beside it, barely sketched but unmistakable, loomed the tall, dark silhouette of the silent shepherd, one hand extended towards the small standing figure. At the bottom, in a shaky handwriting Sarah recognized all too late it wasn't her father's. It was older, like the journals, a sentence. "The flock always needs a shepherdess. The quiet must be kept. Return when the moon is full, Sarah. The twisted oak awaits, **. And every full moon night, Sarah closes all the blinds, turns on every light, and prays not to hear the low, drawn-out moan of cattle, or the whisper of the wind turning into a forgotten tongue, calling her back to the endless prairies and the cold embrace of the shepherd who was always there, under the twisted tree, in the lonely heart of Nebraska. The ranch's charm had faded, but its terror and the sinister beauty of those blue flowers would live forever in her frozen soul. What you heard tonight wasn't just a story. It was a warning, because some things were never meant to be told. And now that you know, you're no longer safe. Something heard you. Something woke up. So if you start seeing shadows where there should be none, or hear whispers calling your name when you're alone, it's not your imagination. And this was a story you were never supposed to hear.